I've got these correct. Natural brown. Yeah, we'll start with the natural brown, which is the Derwent Natural Brown. We'll start with that one. And we're just going to come in and we're just going to add some of these sort of dark colours in. So there's a little patch above the tail here. So we're just going to start very, very, very gently. I might have to sharpen. And you can see there's sort of like a little tiny tuft of the orange that's kind of coming through. I'm just going to start nice and gently bringing that natural brown in there. We can darken it up again if we need to do, or we can bring a little bit of orange on there as well if you want to do. The paper I'm using, or the surface I'm using, is the same as what I used yesterday for the little owl because it worked really well. And that for me is the Rising Museum board. I have no idea what the one that I used for the hair was, but I didn't like it as much. And I really like this board. And a hint for getting hold of it, if you've got a framing company near you, nip in and ask them if they've got any Rising Museum board. It's made by Legion, and it's a brilliant, brilliant surface. This is 4-ply that I'm using, but they make it in 2-ply and they make it in 8-ply as well. Okay, so carrying on, I'm just going to bring a little bit of that brown down along the back of the tail there. So it's almost like the other side of the deer here. Just coming down here, darkening that up a little bit. I've got a question here. I've got 2 questions. Okay, let's go with the putty eraser first. So now, I have used a couple of different putty erasers this week. I've used and I can show you exactly the difference. I've used the Derwent one. This is the Derwent one. It's very hard. And it removes the colour quite well. You can just sort of dab it and it will take the graphite off. This one's fine, but my preference is definitely the Faber-Castell one. And the Faber-Castell one comes, here's one I made earlier. The Faber-Castell one comes in this little plastic box. And they make them in some jassy colours as well, but I tend to use the grey one, the grey-blue one. I love this because you can just mould it in your hand, you can squish it around, you can make dolphins and penguins and all of that kind of stuff. And it's brilliant for just sort of lifting. You can just lift the colour. It just, I don't know, it just feels a little bit better and it moves. It just feels a bit more squishy. But that's a kneadable eraser, and a kneadable eraser is fabulous for harder pencils, so brilliant for polychromos, for Pablos. It will still take some of the softer pencils like the Light Fast off, but because the softer pencils are softer, they tend to kind of adhere to the surface a little bit more. So that's my kneadable eraser, and I use it as a tool for bringing highlights and stuff like that in, as well as sort of like taking sort of well, not even mistakes. I don't really use it for mistakes. If I was going to erase a mistake, I'd probably use like a proper eraser. And then I've got another question here. I've got drafting film today. Should I do anything differently? So I would suggest you follow exactly the same as what I'm doing here. But you have got the opportunity to be able to use your eraser and your slice tool, if you wish, to bring in extra texture. But I would follow pretty much what I'm doing with mine here. Is the doe's left leg missing? No. No, it's not. So its left leg, I think its right leg is here, and its left leg is somewhere in behind here, so it kind of goes down there. You can see the edge of it here. So, no. I think if it was out in the wild, I don't think it would live if it had 3 legs. And I have no idea what is contained in the erasers. Let's have a look to see if there's any ingredients here. There's no ingredients in there. I have no idea what's in it. Yeah, it just says a kneadable art eraser, so I don't know whether it's got latex in it, I'm afraid. But I'm sure if you looked online, I'm guessing because there's maybe an allergy or something like that, I'm sure if you go online, you'll be able to see if it has. So let's just come down here. I'm just going to use this brown here as well. This is still the natural brown. And we're going to just come into the leg here, where this dark colour is here. Now, I'm just going to put some light colour in here. So it's still this dark brown, but I want to bring a little bit of the purpley colour in over the top of it a little bit later on. So I'm not going to go too heavy with my layering or put too many layers in. And I'm just going to curl that round. So this is the leg at the back. And this little light area here is where the light is shining. And it's important that we get that light in there. So I'm just going to come down and we're going to darken this up a little bit later. So I'm just going to go a little bit darker in that bottom bit because it is a little bit darker. We can bring some black in there as well. But just basically plotting the colours at the minute. A slice tool is this. This is a slice tool. Can you see there? It says Slice. It's made by a company called Slice. It's an American company. It's basically a craft knife, but they have this ceramic blade. They're not made for art. They're made for sort of box cutters and, just cutting things. But colour pencil artists have discovered that they're absolutely brilliant, particularly on drafting film. So I use this one. This is a manual pen cutter. And you basically, I'm not going to use it on here because it doesn't work very well on this surface, but you basically scrape away and you can create texture and highlights and everything, and it's fabulous on drafting film. And yes, kneadable erasers do get old. They basically lose their stickiness and they stop picking up the colour. Or, as the case that happens with mine, they fall on the floor and they get covered in hair, and then you want to replace them. So I normally buy mine in 4. I get them from Amazon and I get 4 at a time. And you can also, I got them on subscription at one point because I was going through so many. I really like the Faber-Castell ones. They work incredibly well. So let's just come up, we've got that little bit of white on the edge of the deer's leg there, and then let's just come down So we're just using this natural brown still, just adding in these dark elements. And we will bring the black in over the top. And bringing the black in over the top of the brown is going to help make an even richer, darker colour. So I should probably sharpen my pencil up. And I'm going to keep going for the time being. Let's just come down here. Again, we've got the sort of the leg area here. We've got this little dark bit on the bottom of the foot. And then we'll do the grass right at the end. Okay. So we're just blocking in all of these dark elements first. How do I decide the lines for a line art? So I've been doing this quite a long time and creating line arts quite a long time. So I've been creating line arts since probably about 2021. I think I started creating my own digital line arts. And before I was using an app for tutorials. And I always go over the top. You don't need as much information as what I'm putting in here. I prefer less. Some people prefer way more. So I would pick up on all of the main features. So, the limbs, eyes, noses, ears, all of that kind of stuff. And then pick up on sort of the strong lighting and any markings. But like I say, you don't really need as much as I've got in here because you can pick up a lot of this anyway when you're actually physically drawing the piece. And I prefer, when I'm doing my own work, I prefer either I'll do it freehand or I'll just use a much fewer lines, a much simpler line art, because I get confused with it. And it's why I quite like drawing on drafting film, because I sit my line art behind the drafting film, because drafting film is kind of sort of semi-opaque, so you can see through it. And I'll sit my line art behind that, and then I can, kind of move it in and out. No, I don't always start with the dark colours, but something like this is quite a nice idea, and it's a good format to follow. There are no rules. You can do whatever you want to do, and that's what's so lovely about art. You can just make up the rules. You can do whatever you want to do. Okay, so we've got those. Looks like she's wearing boots. Let's just come up onto the bottom area here, and let's just bring in this little bit of the darker element here, which is, I presume, what these jagged lines here are for, which look like a deer in itself, don't they? I'm just going to remove those, because half the time I put these lines in and I'm like, why did I put them in? I don't even need them, and then they cause all sorts of problems. So we need this bit here to be nice and light. I'm just going to remove that little bit there as well. And the other thing as well is, when you first start drawing and you're working from a line art, sometimes you can feel like you could never draw anything without a line art, or you need to have something that's got all of the lines in so that you're following it. And you'll be really, really surprised at how quickly you'll start to be able to kind of recognise shapes, all of that kind of thing. And if you allow yourself to, you will actually be able to kind of wean yourself off either using a line art completely, or you can just start to use a simpler one. You don't have to. You can use really, really detailed line arts. But if you're kind of worried that you're going to get, you're going to have to use it as a crutch forever, again, you can do whatever you like. And if you don't want to use it, you can stop using it. And if you've been drawing for a little while, you'll actually be fine. You'll be absolutely fine. I'm going to bring some orangey colours into here, but again, I just want to bring these sort of dark bits in. Let's just bring a little bit onto the hip up here. So we're still using the same colour. Now, I normally work with sections, but my sections are normally about the size of this. So if I was drawing a dog or a horse or something, the section I would be working on is around about this size. So for me, this is almost like I'm working on a section. Let's just come down the inside of this back leg here, and then you can see really, really well on the photograph the direction of the hair. And I was talking about this earlier in the week. It's really, really important to get the direction of the hair correct. We can also just bring a few little sort of tufty bits in on the edge there. And then we can start to darken this up here. Don't worry about all of those really little sort of stray hairs and stuff. We're not going to put them in. It's way too small for that. I'm just going to darken that up in there. I've left this little bit here because we're going to go with the grey down there. And then I'm just going to bring some of that dark in here. We're just going to get a little bit of structure, but also get quite a bit of colour on quite quickly. And that will enable us to sort of see progress quite quickly as well. Colour pencil is really slow, beautifully slow. Wonderfully slow. I love that it's slow, but it's slow. And sometimes it can feel a little bit frustrating that it's so slow. We know that it's slow, we don't want to speed it up, but sometimes it's like, oh, for goodness sake, it doesn't look like I've done anything. But actually, if you use these little tips, maybe go over with all of the darks first. If you're working on a dark paper, maybe go in with all of the lights first. It kind of makes it look like you've created something quite quickly. Plus, if you take a photograph of it, it looks quite nice. Let's come into this shoulder area here, and we'll just bring a little bit of that sort of tufty bit in there as well. The other thing that I really like is I really like teaching people to use colour pencil using a template like this, because they don't have to worry about getting everything in the right proportion or anything like that. All they have to worry about is getting the line art down on the paper. Then they can really, really concentrate on learning the techniques, so layering, blending, all of that kind of thing. because they're quite tricky techniques. And once you've got those techniques down, it's likely that you'll have done quite a few drawings by that point. And actually, your drawing skills will have improved just through using the templates. So it's a really, really nice way of learning learning a medium, but also sort of polishing up your drawing skills. And a lot of people will go on to do sort of like some sketching, or maybe even doing some painting or something like that, and do the freehand stuff. A lot of people will just stick with their line arts, and whatever you want to do is the right thing. So I'm just going to bring a little bit of dark along there, just nice and gently. And then let's bring some onto this little fawn's bottom. Now, I'm just going to miss some of these white areas because we do want these little sort of fluffy white blobs. So I'm going to be a little bit careful about keeping those isolated. We will come in with the white a little bit later on. And we're just going to bring a little bit of fuzziness. So if I want to draw fuzz, I'm going to go round and round. I'm going to look at the quality of the hair that I'm drawing, and I'm going to try and mimic it with my pencil. And obviously, it's quite difficult to draw something fluffy when you've got something hard and pointy. So, trying to create the movement is a really, really helpful thing to do. And then we're going to come down and we're going to look at this little leg here. There's a little bit of light going on in there. And we're just going to darken that in there as well. We're going to come over this and layer over the top of this as well. So we're going to darken some of these bits. It's just quite nice to just sort of get everything kind of working and in. And then let's look at this little leg here as well. I also like to be quite sketchy when I'm starting a piece because it gives movement and it gives life. If you're sort of very, your marks are very static, you can end up with sort of quite a static sort of stilted drawing. So that's why my pencil moves a lot, because it's sketching. A lot of people are like, it's because you're drawing so fast. It's not really. It's just I'm just a little bit sketchy. Okay, so as the deer and fawn overlap each other, would you go darker and or lighter than in the reference photo if needed to help create a more 3D effect? No, I would draw it as per the photograph, unless there was something really standing out that felt wrong. This doesn't feel wrong. This feels absolutely fine. One thing that we'll have to be really careful about is there's almost like a line along the top of the little fawn, and if we're not careful, we're going to end up with an outline, so the fawn will actually look like it's not part of the whole picture. So that's what I would say. Just be a little bit careful about. But no, I wouldn't change anything because the lighting in this is really quite nice. So I'd keep this as it is. And I'm just going to come down here. We are going to bring some purple into these legs as well, and just bring like a little line in there for that tendon. And we're just going to pull that around there. And what's really nice about working with stuff like this and making it, I'm not saying it's easy, but making it have a kind of ease. Hopefully, it's less overwhelming than sort of picking up, a drawing and just trying to create something from scratch. Where it's quite complicated, or you're trying to get sort of like a multitude of colours in, or anything like that. And hopefully, I've made these a little bit more sort of simplified. We've got some nice pinks that are going to go into here as well. So I'm just going to come down this little leg here, still using that natural brown, and to the bottom of that little foot. Oh gosh, you want to see my setup? Hold on a sec, let me just take a photograph and I'll show you. So bearing in mind I'm just gonna take this picture now. Bearing in mind I've got like camera set up and lights and all of that kind of thing. So it looks really grubby and messy, but that's kind of me. So here we go. I don't know whether you can see that. You can see that on the camera there. So this is my drawing board here. I've literally just taken this photograph now. There's my iPad. This is one light. This strip light across here is a cool light. It gets very hot. And then these two here. Oops. These are photography softboxes, and they're more of a warm light, so I get like a mixture of warm and cool, and then they stand up. And then this is a rig that's actually, it goes from floor to ceiling, and there's my camera there. And then that's all attached with wires and everything to my computer that's over the other side. And then this here is my trolley with all of my pencils on, so you can see all of the pencils on there, my sharpener. Yeah. And that there is my jiggle board, which I sometimes use if my legs are feeling a bit fat. Jiggle board on. So yeah, and so that's my setup. So it's really not particularly flash, but it definitely does what I need it to. So, it's quite good. So hopefully you can see that being disorganised isn't such a bad thing, because I'm super disorganised. Okay, let's just come back into this little leg down here. So hopefully the speed is okay for you. I think I'm going sort of quite slowly, just as we sort of plot these little bits of colours. When we go into the faces, I think I'm going to sharpen my pencil, because you can see it's getting a little bit blunt there. Okay, tips on taking commissions. So my suggestion around taking commissions, let's just fill this dark bit in here as well, but don't use any heavy pressure, because we still want to get a little bit of the orange in there as well. But I want to get this dark feeling of the shadow going on in there. So I'm just going to kind of colour that in. It's quite, the lines are quite straight. Okay. And then I'm just going to come around here with that here, and then I'm going to sharpen my pencil, and then we can get into some of those sort of smaller details. So tips with commissions. The biggest tip I can give you is do as much research as you possibly can on marketing. Listen to podcasts, join in, I'm just going to sharpen this, join in any sort of free webinars, anything to do with marketing. Just do as much as you possibly can, because it's all about marketing. And if you're sort of sitting there going, I want to do commissions, but I'm rubbish at marketing, I don't want to do any of it, then it's going to be quite difficult, because the marketing is the bit that's going to really, really help. It's a bit of a pain, because of course social media, well, I mean, I use social media. You can still use like traditional ways of getting your name known, where sort of like in an animal, well, it depends on what you're doing commissions of, but if it's animals, in animal feed places, in vet surgeries, all of that kind of stuff. But for me, social media is definitely where it's at, but it's changed. It definitely has changed. It's changed a lot, and of course you've got the algorithm to contend with all of that kind of stuff. So it's really, really very much about understanding marketing and being able to have a really good grasp of what you can do and how to do it. So that's what I would say is my biggest tip. So I'm just going to come into here, and again, we're just going to bring in these sort of darker elements. We're going to bring the orangey bits on the top. This isn't the law. This isn't how you have to draw. This is just one way of doing it. I'm just going to bring a little bit around the eye. You can see the eye is just a black blob, and that's all it's going to be. I'm not going to do anything other than a black blob. So I'm just going to come into there. And then we've got a little nose at the end. And I'm just going to do everything with this dark brown to begin with, and then we can bring the black in on the top. Again, don't worry about details or anything like that because we're not going to be able to see them anyway. And then let's just do the mother deer. And do you study the animal's anatomy before you draw each animal? It's a really, really good idea to understand anatomy. It really is a good idea. And if you know an animal, so I've had horses and ridden horses and been around horses since I was 3. So I kind of know horses. I know dogs. I find cats quite difficult. Well, I find them more difficult to draw than any other animal. And that I think is because I can't see the structure underneath their fur. They tend to be very, very fluffy. So you can't really see the bone structure underneath, whereas usually you can with horses and dogs, unless you've got like a scruffy dog. I think it is a really, really good idea to to kind of get to grips with anatomy. How eyes work as well. I'm just going to bring a little bit of that eyelash in there. How pupils work. So horses' pupils, deer's pupils, sheep's pupils, very different to cats and dogs and human pupils. So kind of getting to grips with that and understanding how that works is going to set you up much more for success because you're going to be able to understand how everything works rather than drawing something that you think is right. That can be sort of quite problematic. So let me just pull this into here. And then we've just got the little nose down at the bottom, and then we can pick up a different colour and get some of that orange in, which will be really nice. A little nosy there. Obviously, if we were drawing this bigger, then we would look at creating much more detail. Just put a little bit of that in there. Good, okay. Okay. So, let's come back to the other side here, and let's bring some of that grey in. And I'm going to use the fossil grey. Oops, that's not it. I'm going to use the fossil grey. I'm just going to sharpen that up as well, actually. So it's the light, fast fossil grey. And it's a really lovely grey. It's sort of got a pinky tinge to it. I'm just going to bring in some of the colour into the grey area on the tail here. So I'm just going to, just nice and gently, you can see there's sort of quite a pale bit on the top. I'm just going to kind of leave that a little bit white. And I'm just going to bring in, you can leave it white if you like. It's not white, but if you wanted to leave it white, you can do. And I'm going to bring some of that in here. And I'm going to bring some of the fossil grey into here as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave some little white areas. So I'm just going to leave the paper showing through. And then we're going to come into this bit. All the way down there to here. So I'm just going to fill in some of these bits here. I'm going to come down and fill in these little bits as well. And then let's just come and I'm going to fill some of the here in there and into here a little bit. We've got some pink to come, which I'm going to use the polychromos cinnamon for. Let's just bring a little bit of that into there as well. So just really just blocking the colour in for now. Good. Okay, just put it in there as well. Okay, let's get some of the oranges in and the pinky colours. In fact, let's go with the pink first. So have I ever tried the brand Canson? Yeah, so I've used a few Canson papers. There's one that I used, which I quite liked, but it was really, really smooth, and that was the Canson Moulin de Roy, very smooth paper, but that was quite nice, quite liked it. So this is the cinnamon, the polychromos cinnamon that we're going to be using now. It's like a lovely earthy pinky colour. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be bringing a little bit of the pink into the deer, the mother deer here, and then we're going to be bringing in the orangey colour over the top. Which is going to work really, really nicely. So the pinky colour first, we can see that there's a little bit of pinky here. You might be looking at it going, I can't see any pink at all, Bonnie. You just have to trust me. What we're going to do is we're just going to leave these little spots. So where these little areas are, we're just going to leave these little spots. I'm going to draw around those. And I'm just going to bring that pinky colour in. I'm also going to bring the pinky colour in over the top of the brown so that it kind of sort of attaches, it connects. And I'm just going to pull that down here. I'm just going to let it sort of drift down there. Okay, bring a little bit into there as well. And down into here. Somebody's saying, can I use oyster for some of the whites? You can. It's a very icy pink, is the oyster. So yeah, you can use whatever you like if that's what you'd like to use. And then explain again what blocking is. This is what we're doing here. We're just blocking colours in. We're just going, I can see a colour, I'm going to just put a little bit of that colour in. So that we end up with basically a picture that's all coloured in, if you like. And then we go in and we add some of the details. And it enables us to have an element of the base layers. So when you're drawing something bigger, you do a similar thing, but you'd be creating base layers. And the base layers are what are going to enable you to create all of the lovely details and the values and all of that. So this is a really great way of kind of practicing base layers, but on a much, much sort of smaller basis. So I'm just going to come in here. So this is the pinky colour, the cinnamon. I'm going to come into here. I'm just going to get rid of some of these little squiggly marks here so they don't show up. I'm going to bring that in there. And having the pink underneath the orange just works really, really nicely. So we could just put the orange straight on, but having the pink just adds an extra sort of element. The other thing that we could do is we could bring in the pink, we could put it all over, and then we could just rub out the little marks. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to kind of leave these little, and it doesn't matter, you don't have to have them exactly the same as the photograph. I'm going to try and use my pencil in the same direction that the fur is growing. Always a good idea. And I'm just going to come down here and just leave these little marks. Actually a little bit more orangey. So I'm just going to come down here. What we're going to do with the baby is we're actually going to use the white polychromos to indent so that we can just literally draw over the top, so we don't have to be worrying about any of the colour or anything like that. And I'm just going to whack a little bit of pink in here. So we're still sort of early stages with the layering, definitely. Okay, so that's good. And then let's just come into the little deer here. And I'm just going to bring the pink along the bottom edge of the deer. I'm going to bring a little bit into the bottom bit there. And then I'm going to bring some into the bottom area here. Just nice and gently. And I'm going to bring a little bit in over the top of the brown that we put in there as well. And I'm going to bring a little bit of sort of fluffiness into here. So is it okay to mix light fast pencils with chroma or Prisma pencils? Yes, absolutely. You can mix any pencils you like. If they work for you, then that's what matters. Sometimes you might find you don't like how they mix, and then you just stop doing it. But basically, you can mix whatever you want. There's no rule about you can't mix sort of more oil-based pencils with more wax-based ones. Well, some people have a rule, but it's for me it doesn't matter. You use what you want to use. Okay, so I'm going to go into there. Good. Okay, and then let's just look at these little faces. I'm going to bring a little bit of pink into the ears here, and in here. Colours as well is a really, really, it can be a very emotive subject, because when you first start drawing, it's highly likely that you won't see colour. Or you will see colour, but you'll just see, brown, orange, red, green, blue. You won't see all of the colours in between, and that's because your brain has filtered all of that information out. But as soon as you start doing more and looking more, your brain will start to filter out more. And it's amazing how it happens. All of a sudden, you just start to see colour. And it will happen. It's quite speedy for some people, and it's a little bit slower for others, but it will happen. And I think the more you do, and the more you experiment, the reason that I have ended up sort of pretty good with colour is because I experimented. I was like, what will this colour do? What will that colour do? And I just had to play around with how my colours worked. So I'm just going to bring a little bit of that pink into the face. You can see I'm just kind of blocking in some of these the areas that are sort of marked off with the line art. Just sort of almost like, if you like, colour by numbers. That's basically what I'm doing here. Just blocking it in. I can see this colour. I'm just going to block that in. How do you store completed artwork so it doesn't get damaged? Mine are all stored in a plant chest. So it's, they're just stored in a plant chest. But basically, you either want to put them away somewhere safe, or you want them framed and on a wall behind glass. That's basically, the ultimate goal is to have them on the wall behind glass. And then I've got a full set of chroma flow, but I don't really use them. They're a little bit soft for me, and they're not overly light fast. And yes, the polychroma is beige red. So the beige red looks like this. Beige red is the lighter colour, so that's going to work fine as well. Okay. So we've got all of these colours in now. Now we're going to start looking at getting some of this vibrant orange in. And I've got the most gorgeous orange, which is the Persian orange. Light fast Persian orange. So the end of it looks like this, and the tip of it looks like it's black. And I'm just going to sharpen that as well. The Derwent oranges, they have another one that's called dark orange, and they have one called flame, which is utterly gorgeous. I'm really, hang on a sec. They're superb oranges. That's flame there. It's like a bright orange. And the dark orange is, so it's quite similar to the Persian orange. This is the dark orange. You can see that it's got a little bit more red in it. But it's beautiful oranges, really, really good oranges. This is Persian orange, and it's got a little bit of reddiness to it, which I like, because obviously we've got that in the deer's coat. Now we're going to start to actually add some vibrancy. So, if you wanted, you could even sort of leave your drawing like that, and it would work beautifully. So, Persian orange, nice and sharp, or whatever orange you've got. And I'm just going to come in over the top. I'm not going to press too hard, because I know that with my light fast, if I go too hard, they're going to snap. And I'm just going to start to be a little bit more specific about where I'm putting my colour. Okay, so we're going to have a little bit of a break in about 5 minutes, so that you can all sort of move your hands, jump up and down, get another cup of tea, whatever. And it will give me an opportunity to sort of tell you about the bonus that we've got going on today as well. And we can see how this fur is sort of curling around, and it's just sort of tufting. I'm going to just bring a little bit more of that cinnamon in places where I didn't put it. I'm just going to put a little bit of that cinnamon into there. The cinnamon and the Persian orange work really, really nicely together. So I'm back in with the Persian orange again now. And we're just going to carry on with the fur on top of the body here. So I'm just going to use single pencil strokes, nice and gently. And we can start to bring almost like a little bit of detail in. And you can see I'm going one way, and then I'm going to go the other way as well. And it just, on this particular surface, it works really, really well, taking your pencil one way and then taking it back the other way. Even if you're just doing single pencil strokes, it just kind of fills the tooth in a little bit better. I'm just going to come in over the top of the brown that we've got here, just to give it a bit more sort of vibrancy. So just nice and gently. So somebody's asking if I've ever used a dull sharpener before. I haven't. The sharpeners that I've always had are the Swordfish and the Derwent. And I've had a couple of Faber-Castell ones as well. Okay, so I'm just going to leave some of these little spots free of colour. Don't worry too much about the hair direction. It's a very small piece, so nobody's going to know if you get it sort of slightly off. And I'm just going to leave these little spots here, and then come into the top bit here. So again, just sort of nicely. So we've got a little bit of texture at the top there. This is Persian orange. It's Persian orange that we're using. Yeah, Persian orange. Yeah, the natural brown is, we'll probably bring a little bit more of the natural brown in, but at the minute, this is Persian orange. We're going to be using this for a little bit longer, because we've got, obviously, there's quite a lot of the orange to sort of fill in. So I'd say I'm using a medium pressure, so that I'm actually getting the colour onto the surface. Now, some of you might be using a paper that maybe is a little bit trickier to get the colour on the surface. So the paper that I was using on Sunday, that was a lot harder to get the actual colour down on the surface. I had to use much harder pressure. And I was getting like a bit of a weird texture on there as well, whereas this surface that I'm using here just works really, really well. It's amazing how you'd think all papers work the same, and they really don't. Okay, so I'm just going to come down into here. I'm going to lessen my pressure so that I still get a little bit of the orange in here, but it's not quite as vibrant. So I can use the same pencil here to bring the vibrancy up, with harder pressure, and then I can lessen my pressure, and we can get this sort of softer orangey colour coming through. Coming down there. So I've got a question now about my thoughts on Strathmore paper. So I have some Strathmore Bristol vellum, Bristol smooth. You can also use, and I have used in the past, I think when I first started drawing, I used the toned tan, which I found too thin. You'll see a lot of artists who do sort of like, you know, realism on TikTok and all that kind of stuff. They use a lot of the Strathmore toned tan. It's got like almost like a hair in it. You can see it's got like texture and stuff in it. And what I would say is, if you've got some and you're using it and you like it, there's you know, brilliant. You know, yeah. If you like using something, and it's very rare, I think, these days to get a paper that's not archival, that's not acid free. You know, so I think you can't really go wrong unless you don't like using it. If you're using something and you're like, not sure about this, then it's time for a bit of a change. I'm just going to bring a little bit of the orange down into here as well, and then we're just going to have a short break, and we'll come back and we'll finish off using the orange. Hello. You know, creativity is a bit like nature, isn't it? Sometimes it lies to a bluebell tutorial, I have to say, it was really, really nice. I really enjoyed it. I only used blues and purples, and I freehanded it as well, because the shapes and everything were just so simple. It was a really nice piece to do. So if you haven't already, do sign up, do come and join me, because yeah, it's a lovely one. Okay, so we're going to come back onto the deer. You can see we've got this, the bottom is actually looking really quite nice, and we're going to move into the sort of the main body here. So I'm going to start on sort of just above the shoulder area. I'm just going to bring in, I'm just going to kind of sort of wisp it in so that we get a little bit of that texture on the top of the back. Animals never have a big strong line, you know, so trying to keep the sort of the outline of your drawing sort of nice and soft is a really, really good idea. If you find that your drawings are becoming a little bit sort of cartoony-like, usually it's due to very strong lines and really strong contrast where we don't want the contrast to be. Yeah, Persian orange, this is, yeah, just sticking with the Persian orange all the way through now while I kind of fill the deer's body up. Now, let's have a look here. Do I use a protective spray? No, I don't. I have in the past, and I ruined a piece of work, so I'll never use a fixative again. But what fixative can do is it can, not all of the time, but a lot of the time, it will darken your colours. And if you're not careful, you can end up with little sort of spots where the spray is sort of sprayed out. So I don't tend to use fixative at all. I just either keep my pieces in a drawer, or they're framed and on the wall. So you can see here, I'm just sort of gently filling in the fur, and I'm leaving these little spots to be the colour of the paper, really. Watercolour paper, too bumpy. Okay, so watercolour paper, when we talk about hot press, it's hot press watercolour. And what happens with watercolour is it comes in, well, I think, I might be completely wrong because I'm not a watercolour artist, but it comes in 3 different sorts of paper. You get hot press, which is kind of, as it sounds, the paper presses are hot. You get cold pressed, where they're sort of pressed and they've got a much stronger texture. So those are the really bumpy ones. And then you have a knot NOT, where it's not actually pressed, and it's the sort of like the feeling of the original paper pulp. And usually for colour pencils, we use the hot press because it's smoother. That's not to say you can't use the other types. You just might find it a little bit easier to use a smoother paper. And then I know nothing about Crawford and Black Premium pencils, I'm afraid. I sort of stick with the more artist quality ones, purely because I started my career out as a portrait artist, so I needed to have pencils that were like really sort of top quality and light fast. Okay, so I'm just going to come down here. We can use the eraser a little bit, so if you think, oh, I want to put a bit more of you know, a little bit of a mark in there, I can just lift that out. I'm just going to take that one out there. That's it. And then we're just going to come down here, and I'm just kind of making these little spots up as I go along, which is absolutely fine to do. I'm just going to come down here. In fact, I think what I'll do is I'll just dab the ones down here out, just because I'm going to have to go a little bit lighter just to get this sort of slightly lighter colour. So I'm just going to come in here. I'm going to come in around the tummy area. I'll bring a little bit more brown in there as well. Yeah, so I always recommend, if you're going to frame it, under glass, and I would suggest, if you can, use a museum grade glass, a UV protective glass, which is going to really, really help and keep your piece sort of staying vibrant, you know, for longer, for a lot of years, especially if you're selling your work as well. And yes, so usually why we use a mat or a mount, we say mount in the UK, mat in the US, usually the reason for that is because we don't want the glass to touch the paper. You know, so you'll use a mat or a mount board to keep the frame away. But very often, I will frame without a mat board or a mount board. It can look really, really amazing framing without a mount. It can make something look like a real sort of original painting. And with that, what I tend to use is what's called a slip. And it's like a little extra tiny frame that just sits right next to the normal frame. And the glass sits on that little frame, and it keeps the glass from touching the drawing, the painting. And it just looks really, really nice. Sometimes mounting and matting can almost make your pieces look like a print. So if it's a really special piece, then I'll do that. I won't use a mat or a mount board, and it works really, really nicely. So you tend to not put glass on things like oil paintings because they kind of need to breathe, and there's no need because they're, you know, highly light fast, and it just kind of works really well. So I'm just going to come in here. So this is working really nice. I'm just going to come in with my needle eraser. I'm just going to dab some of those there. I am going to come and darken it again. But you can see how nice it's looking, and quite simply. You know, obviously, if I'm doing a really, really highly detailed drawing, then we would be looking at using way more layers, you know, and lots more details, and we'd be really sort of concentrating on this underpainting, if you like, the you know, the base layers. But what we're doing here is we're just kind of getting to grips with what a layer feels like. You know, because if we were here and we were kind of drawing this really big, we'd hardly get anything done. And actually, finishing a piece and learning a little bit about the blending, learning a little bit about the layering is going to give you so much confidence, I think, and make you want to do more. And that's, you know, I don't want to sort of put you off at the first hurdle by giving you like a huge drawing to do that, you know, is quite sort of technical and complicated. So I'm just going to come into there and see that sort of shoulder area is a little bit lighter. We'll probably come in and use the needle eraser in there a little bit more as well. No, it doesn't. So does UV change the way the drawing looks? So the old UV glass used to kind of make the experience really quite dull. The very old glass, because of how the glass was sort of created, and you went to kind of look at it, and it was sort of like looking at it through fog. The new UV glass, which I use a glass called art glass, it's like looking at the drawing without glass on it at all, so you don't see any reflection. It's a really fantastic product. It's an amazing product. What you might see at certain angles is a little bit of green, and that's it. But yeah, it's lovely. The spots on the deer, so I've drawn around these little spots. We're going to do the baby deer in a slightly different way, but I've drawn around these spots, and then I'm just going to come into here, and I've just made the spots up, to be honest. They're not all in exactly the right place, but I don't care. I'm not somebody who, it's not that I don't take pride in my work, because I really do, but I suppose I take care where I feel it's necessary. And for me, the little spots, I just don't think it's necessary for me to spend ages and ages, figuring out and worrying where they're all going to go, because at the end of the day, nobody cares. And you might think that's a little bit flippant, but, that's just me, because I want to enjoy what I'm doing. I want to really, really enjoy what I'm doing. And if I've got to spend time really concentrating about, where all of the little spots and everything are going, I probably wouldn't enjoy it as much as I do. And I think it's probably why I don't draw a huge amount of birds, because the feathers are so symmetrical. They drive me a bit crazy. Because with fur, I can make fur up. With feathers, you can't make them up. You've got to do them correct, otherwise they look weird. And I think it's why I really like drawing fur, and I like drawing textures as well, because you can kind of once you've kind of figured out how a texture works, you can just rinse and repeat. Which I like that. I'm a lazy artist. That's what I am. So okay, let's just come into here, and I'm just going to darken this bit up here as well. So I'm still using the Persian orange. We're a little bit lighter in there, which is fine. I might bring a little bit of the champagne in there actually. And now we're going to move on to the baby deer. I am going to come back into here. We're going to tweak it a little bit. But I want to move on to the baby deer, and we're going to use, if you have it, the white polychromos. Now, anybody who works with me knows that I never use the white polychromos unless I'm going to be drawing whiskers or I'm going to be indenting something. The white polychromos, quite frankly, is it's a useless colour pencil. Well, it's not, I tell a lie. But if you try to draw with the white and then you try and colour over the top of it, you try and get another colour over the top of it, what happens is the white will resist the other colour. So you get these weird little spots, or you don't get anything at all. So it's a really great pencil to use to resist other colours and to indent. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to use it to pull in these little white spots on the baby deer, because these are much brighter. These little white spots are much brighter than on the mother deer. And I'm going to press a little bit with them. So I'm just going to come in where all of these little spots are, and we're just going to press quite hard. So we're actually making a mark in the paper. You probably won't be able to see it. People who do this really, really well have little UV lights that shine, because then they'll be able to see the white, they'll be able to see the marks that they've made. I haven't got a UV light, so I'm just kind of pressing this in willy-nilly, hoping for the best. I think that's probably my middle name, is willy-nilly hoping for the best, because that's a lot of what I do. At school, very regularly, I had on my report slapdash. So Bonnie is slapdash. And then I had something, I must fish it out actually, I think it's something I lost my report, and something else that was like, if she put as much effort into her French classes as she does in drawing horses all over her exercise books, she'd do rather well. I wasn't a very academic child at all. Okay, so I'm just kind of squashing those in, and hopefully it'll work. It'll probably be an absolute disaster, but if it's a disaster, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to now take my Persian orange, and we're going to go over the top. You might want to wait for me to have done it first, see if it works. So we're just going to come in over the top and hope for the best. So yeah, so can you see how the little white spots are just appearing, which is a big relief for me, because the white polychromos just doesn't like other pencils sitting over the top of it. So that's fabulous, and then we can work around those little spots as well. And so, which is why the white polychromos is really, really, really great for whiskers and stuff like that. So yeah, if you've got a white luminance, you can do the same thing, but you may well be able, if you don't press hard enough, you may well end up drawing in over the top. So if you're using anything other than a white polychromos, I would just make sure that you're pressing hard enough. So you can see how nicely that's worked. Those little spots have come out on there, and we can you can press quite hard with that orange, and it's not going to, that white is just going to completely resist it, which is great. And we've got that little blankety bit there. Drafting film, no, you wouldn't do the same technique with drafting film. Drafting film, my suggestion would be to have your slice tool, and then you would just slice out those little marks. You'd just be like that. It's not going to work on this paper. Or you'd use like an eraser, but I think the slice tool is going to work better. And then I'm just going to come down here with my orange. I'm going to bring a little bit into the bottom area here, and we're just going to start to bring a little bit more colour into this. And then I'm probably going to use my black. I'm going to use a little bit of orange down here as well. Still this Persian orange. If the indenting didn't work, what I would do is I would just dab off some of the colour and just try again with your white, press harder. If you can't dab the colour off, just make it that your baby deer doesn't have spots. Simple as that. Technique for pastel matte, I'd use a similar technique. I'd use the white. Don't press too hard. Just use the white in there, and it should work really well. I think if we were doing something bigger on pastel matte, then maybe we would sort of change the technique a little bit. But because this is so small, it's going to be difficult, or more difficult, to kind of get the spots in over the top, because we're not using that many layers. The thing with pastel matte is you can get light over dark, but you have to get the layers in to be able to get it. So now I'm just going to come in over the top of that, the darker colour here, with the Persian orange in there. Looks like it's got a little collar on. And we're just going to come into the head as well, and I'm going to go back to just using single pencil strokes, just dabbing in the orange in there, just dabbing it in. I'm going to use some purple. Once we've got all of these little faces filled in, I'm actually going to use some purple in over the top of the orange, which is going to be fantastic for the shadows. And that's all around your colour theory. The opposite, it's really, really good to use opposite colours, so complementary colours. It's a really, really good idea. The complementary colour of orange is blue. Now, if I was to use a blue on these oranges, it would turn them green because the oranges are very high. It's got a very high amount of yellow in it, and of course blue and yellow make green. So we're not going to go with the complementary. We're going to go with the split complementary, which is purple. So we're going to use the Mars Violet. And you might be thinking, you're talking absolute, I don't understand what you're saying here at all, Bonnie. And I get you. But the more you draw, the more you watch, the more you learn, whether it's from me or from anybody else, you will start to pick up these colour choices. I don't know whether I mentioned this. Did I mention this before? I think I might have mentioned it in the fox draw. Back when I first started drawing, I think it was 2016, could have been early 2017, I think it was 2016, before I was full-time, I followed Lisa Clough, so Lacquerie Fine Art, an amazing artist, hysterical, loud, talks 10 to the dozen. If you think I talk quickly, my goodness, but she's brilliant. And she used to do this thing where you could send your work in or share your work on her Facebook or something like that, and she would do a critique on YouTube, which was amazing. And I sent a picture in, and it was a cockapoo that I'd done for somebody's birthday. It was a commission piece. I'm literally just whacking this colour in, and then we're going to use the purple on the top. And she was so complimentary about my drawing. She was like, this is amazing, look at these curls, blah, blah, blah. She said, this is just fantastic. But then she was like, I would maybe suggest using some purples or reds in the shadows. Now, at that point, I think I've been drawing maybe a couple of months, and I think hers was the only Facebook page that I was following. And she was like, if you use some purples in with these sort of yellowy, orangey, creamy colours, you're going to get some really lovely shadows. And that was my sort of first, sort of entry into understanding about colour theory. And you get that, if you get these artists who are really, really happy to share all of this amazing information with you, you can learn so much, and then of course you take it away and you start to experiment and all of that kind of stuff. So there's been a couple of artists who've been very, very keen, just with very, I'm saying basic, but I mean, it had a big impact. So I talked about Aaron Gabb the other day, and then Lisa Clough, she also was the one that introduced me to Scotch Magic Tape, and I kind of took that and did my own thing with it. I think that's the thing, isn't it? You listen to what people say, and then you do you. So I think it's really, really important as well that that these people are credited with things like this, because we all learn through different ways. I mean, I haven't done any tutoring. I've done a couple of workshops, but we all learn in different ways, and picking stuff up from groups is a fantastic way to learn. That, and kind of joining. I think I was part of her Patreon for a while as well. Just sort of picking tips up and all of that kind of stuff. So it's really good when you've got people who are really happy to share. Really, really good. Okay, I'm just going to add a little bit more of this orange onto this the mother deer's leg here, and then we're going to come in with the black. Oops. No, I don't think the jacket is included with the replay. I don't think. So I would not use, somebody's put here, can you use ink for highlights? Personally, I only use colour pencil. If you're going to use something for highlights, make it something like, I don't think I've got one here. If you're going to use a white pen, I would use a Posca. I would not use a jelly roll. Jelly roll pens are not archival. They will turn yellow and they will drop off your paper. So I wouldn't do that. Okay, so chat's available if you watch the replay on YouTube. Can you use an electric eraser on pastel mat? You absolutely can. I've got an electric eraser here, actually. I can just show you very quickly how it works. So this is a Derwent one. It's an ergonomic one, and it's one where you press the button and it goes on. There's another one that they do where you have to press the button all of the time, which is annoying. So you could use an electric eraser. Another really, really great way to get little spots, and it works really nicely on pastel mat. Works really well on pastel mat. There's loads and loads of different things that you can sort of have a play around with. Okay, so our next pencil is going to be the Mars Violet. I'm going to sharpen this one as well. So it's the Light Fast Mars Violet. Just going to sharpen this one. Nice long point there. So again, we just need to be careful about the pressure, because we don't want to end up pinging that point off. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring some of this Mars Violet into these areas here. So I'm just going to pull a little bit into the white there, just very gently. Then I can just pick up my pressure a little bit. I'm going to bring a little bit of the that purpley colour into here. If you don't have the Mars Violet and you are planning on doing more pencil work, I would definitely recommend that you get one. It's one of those pencils that is flipping brilliant. It's such a good pencil. And what it's good for is those shadowy areas on orangey animals. So if you're drawing animals, it's a no-brainer to have one, because there are so many orangey, reddy, browny animals, and using it for the shadows is just, it's fantastic. It's such a good colour. You might be thinking of purple on, whatever, but purple on orange for shadows is like, it's a match made in heaven. It really, really is. So I'm just going to come down here and just add a little bit more. I am going to add some black in here as well, just to get that contrast sorted. I'm going to add a little bit more of that purple in there. So this is just sort of increasing the layers, and I can now start to just bring a little tiny bit of detail into the bone structure in here as well, using that Mars Violet. And of course, the Light Fast pencils are they're quite a soft pencil. So, if they're working nicely on the surface that you're working on, they're going to blend really, really well. Some surfaces they don't work so well on, and that's the same for every pencil. It just depends on the surface that you're using and how you like to use them. Some people absolutely love smooth papers. I can't make head or tail of smooth papers. I'm just like, nope, stumped, not going to work for me. And it's very much about how you use your pencils, how you layer them, the pressure, all of that kind of thing. Now, a substitute for Mars Violet is very few and far between. You're probably going to find something in the Prisma range. I haven't got any Prismas here. Maybe something like what's it called? Something rose, clay rose, something like that. You're also going to find the Luminance Sepia 10%. It's a little bit lighter. Let me just find that is a substitute. It's just finding something. I mean, what you could do in the polychromos range is use something like, it's not going to show up as bright purple. It's just going to mix with the orange, and it's going to work really, really nicely. So, if you haven't got the Mars Violet, then I would use something like, and just start to add a few of these little detaily bits, a little bit more, just darken that in there a bit. This leg here, just put a little bit more in there. We are going to keep saying we're going to come back with the black, and we are. And then I'm just going to bring a little bit of the purpley colour under there. And we're going to bring some up into the tummy bit here as well. So when I introduce a different colour, I'm always going to bring it onto top of the other colour, just so that we get this blend. So you're not getting one colour and then another one right next to it. So I'm starting in the brown and then I'm pulling it out onto the orange. So we're getting that kind of layered effect in there. It's in here. Sometimes when you put colours down and you're layering with colour pencil, you start with one colour and then there's no semblance of that colour left once you've finished. And sometimes it feels like, well, what's the point? Why would you even put that colour in? Why would we even put the brown in? But actually it does lift the piece, and it's a good starting point, and it's just, it will have made a difference. So, don't ever get to the point where you've kind of finished a drawing and gone, oh, I don't know why I even did that, there was no point in that. And a lot of the time, I talk about never making mistakes because I don't rub anything out. Actually, I make mistakes in everything, and all I do is I just layer those mistakes and add them into the piece that I'm drawing. And at the end, I'm always really, really glad that I made the mistake, because it will have contributed to the finished piece, So I think if you can kind of think of it like that, any mistake, just incorporate it, and it's just going to work fine. Can you name some core pencils that are essential? Yes, absolutely I can. So core pencils, if I'm talking polychromos, I want as many of the greys as possible. For me, the polychromos has the best range of greys. It has it's got 7, but it's got 6 warm greys, it's got 6 cold greys, it's then got a Payne's grey, which is a cold grey, and it's got a dark sepia, which in the polychromos range is a grey. It's like a very, very dark, warm grey. The greys for me are essential, particularly if you're going to be drawing animals. They're such, and they're really good greys as well. I would also suggest that walnut brown, if you're going to be drawing animals, walnut brown, raw umber and brown ochre, all essentials. Cinnamon, essential. Caput mortem violet, essential. I'm just going to name 120 colours now, you do know that, don't you? And yes, the Caput mortem violet will work, yeah, but just be careful not to press too hard if you're going to use the Caput mortem violet in as that substitute for the Mars violet. I really like the black, the polychromos black. I really like the dark indigo. They've also got some really nice blues. What's another essential colour? Terracotta, burnt ochre, burnt sienna, all those sorts of animal-y colours. And then if we move on to the luminance colours, the essentials with luminance, I would say, are all of the percent colours. Luminance have this really lovely range, beautiful range of colours, and they have this, they have a range of colours that have percents. So they have the solid colour, and then they have a 10%, and some of them have like a 50%, or they have a 5% and a 40%. And those colours, I think, are vital. So brown ochre 10%, raw umber 10%, burnt sienna 10%, burnt ochre 10%, sepia 10%, and then the 50% equivalents and the warm earths as well. Really, really, really good, really good pencils. And then the light fast, I love the oranges, and I would get the Mars violet, I would get the Mars black, I would get the Persian orange, I would get the dark orange, I would get the flame. They've got some really lovely reds that I like drawing with lipstick, if you've ever drawn with lipstick. Really, really good ones. And then Pablo's, I would go for the light grey, ash grey, beige, cream, granite rose, another really good one. So, and then I really like the Holbeins as well. And the Holbeins, I go for the paler colours. The light fastness is a little bit suspect, but I go for the paler colours, like there's beige, there's cork, there's, what's it called? I can't remember the name of it now. I've got one here. Flesh. They haven't got around to changing their flesh colour yet. They've got really nice, they've got peachy colour. They've just got some really good colours, just really good colours. And then I don't really use prismas, but not because they're not a good pencil. I don't use prismas just because they're too soft for me, so I just don't tend to use them. What paper today? I'm using the Rising. Looking at the time, we've got half an hour left, goodness me. I want to bring the black in because I want to darken a lot of these, and I'll bring the black in at the end. Let's just bring that little bit of purple down there as well. What's Frisket? So Frisket, I think you mean it's like a film. It's a low-tack film that you can kind of place over things to protect it. And I've used it before. I've used it on pastel mat, and I've used it on drafting film. There was a point where I was doing airbrush backgrounds, would you believe? I don't know what got into me, but I was doing airbrush backgrounds. I'm just bringing the little dark bits into the head here. I don't want to cover all of the orange, but I'm just bringing those little dark elements in, so we get a little bit more of a structure on the nose there. And then I'm going to bring the Mars violet in over the top of the orange down there as well. In there, I'm going to bring some black into there, so we get a little bit more structure. Its little face in there, and then we're just going to darken this here as well. So yeah, Frisket, it's a film. I think it can be really quite useful, if you wanted to sort of mask things off. Do I ever use, I think that's Stabilo white to reclaim a white highlight. I don't use Stabilo white, to be honest. Usually what I'll use, if I've lost a highlight and I need to add it back in, my go-to would be the Museum Aquarelle watercolour pencil, and I just dab the end onto my tongue. It's totally non-toxic. I dab the end onto my tongue, and I just dab the white on, and you get like a really nice thick white. That works really, really well, and that's kind of my go-to really for, for highlights if I've lost a highlight. So let's just come down here and darken these, and then I'm going to come and get the black, I think. I'm just going to come and, I'm going to get the grass in as well. Okay, let's get this black in quickly, and then we can get this grass in. So just using that purple just to create those little bits of shadow. And now what we can do is we can bring the black in and create this a little bit stronger contrast. Now I've got on there the light fast black. Let's just see what happens with the light fast black. I've got my polychromos if we need it. I'm going to use the Derwent light fast black here to begin with. And we're just going to start to kind of really darken. And it will darken it, and you will see the contrast really kind of start to come through now. Let's darken all of this and get that nice sort of light coming through. I'm just going to use my Persian orange there again and just bring a little bit of that orange into the leg there. Let's just go into here. So you bought the colour chart. No, I haven't done a colour matching for Holbein. It's because I don't use Holbeins in my tutorials. They're a nice pencil, but they're ridiculously expensive, and they're not overly light fast. I do like them, but that's the reason. What I wanted to do in the colour chart is give you the most commonly used pencils that I use, basically. So that if you're you're wanting sort of like a more budget pencil, then you can choose like Castle Arts, something like that. So yeah, the whole band's are lovely, but yeah, they're crazy expensive. Okay, so let's just darken that up a little bit. So we don't have to use really strong pressure. We can just add nice colour in here, and it will just darken up what's underneath it. And then if we want something to be really black, then we can just add a little bit more pressure in. So you can see that that's sort of starting to come quite nicely. And then I just want to darken in this sort of tummy area here, nice and gently. This bit here is very dark, and we then start to get that real sort of nice contrast coming through. Yeah, so to protect your work, I use glassine paper. It's not actually got wax on it, so I would use a glassine paper over a wax paper, just so that you're not kind of adding any kind of waxiness to the surface. That's what I tend to use, the glassine paper. It looks like wax paper, but it doesn't. It's not like that sort of greaseproof paper type thing, and it works really well. Or you could use a piece of kitchen towel or a piece of printer paper. Anything like that's going to work. So we're just going to get this little face in here, just darken this a little bit. So I'm just going to gently go over the top of the colour that I've got there, and it's just going to darken it slightly, and then we can just get that little nose in. So all I'm doing for the nose is just dabbing the colour on. I don't need to try and put details in or anything like that, because if I try and put details in, the likelihood is I'm going to kind of get it a little bit wrong, and then it's going to look weird. It's much better if I just kind of put a vague idea of a nose in there. Let's just darken this bit up here, and that little armpit in there, and then down there. Let's darken this as well. And you can see you don't have to create enormous details. We can still see what it is. And with it being such a small drawing, if you try and create all of these tiny details, actually, you probably end up, making something look a little bit strange. And let's just darken this deer's neck. Darken that little ear there. And this one. And I'm just going to darken her eye as well. In there. And then bring a little bit more dark into the face down here. And down into here as well. So all I'm doing is just kind of shading at this point. And again, it's really, really nice to draw this size and just get used to the different techniques and everything. Because then when you kind of draw a little bit bigger, then you've kind of got used to it a little bit. Okay, and I'm just going to come in with that Persian orange again. The Derwent drawings they're a lovely, lovely pencil. I wouldn't say that they're a substitute for the Lightfast, in that they are they're very soft, they're very fat pencils. And I mean, they have got some that are a similar colour, so you could possibly, but because they're such broad pencils, they're very, very wide pencils, what can happen is that you can't actually get any details or anything with them, and they're very difficult to sharpen to a point. This one here, this is an ivory black. You can see how fat it is compared to the Lightfast, because I'm working with a variety of people, and anybody who doesn't want to use as much detail in their line arts, they can just leave out the details, or I would always encourage people to create their own line arts. I always think that if you create your own line art, it's your work, you know what you're putting in, and it kind of just works a little bit better, really. A little bit of the Mars Violet, just in the ear here, just kind of filling that bit in there. That's a bit better. That's good. Okay, so we're going to bring a little bit of the grass in. Now I've got two greens. I've got grass green and I've got foliage. We're going to start off with the grass green, kind of where it's going to go up to, just nice and gently, and I'm just going to go side to side. Let me just shimmy that over a little bit. We're going to put the shadow and everything in, and we're going to just come. Now, I was talking on Sunday when we were doing the hair about grass and how terrified we are of it, and how I have done the shaping, the shaping around the legs. I've done the putting a bit of grass there, putting a bit of grass there, putting a bit of grass there. Don't ever do that. Whatever you do, don't. And I've done it, so I can say don't ever do it. It's just don't ever do that. We never see an animal with just like a little tiny patch of grass under one foot and then nothing, and then under another foot. It just doesn't happen. So we're just kind of drawing a semblance of the grass. And you can see I'm holding my pencils quite far back, and I'm just throwing a little bit of that sort of difference in, and then we'll bring some black in for the shadows. So I'm just going to bring a little bit of that foliage in there. It doesn't have to go everywhere. You can leave a little bit of light, you can leave a bit of dark. You can put a load more grass in than what I've done. It's totally and utterly up to you. Shadows are. So if you look at your reference photo, you can kind of see how these shadows work. And the shadows are going to sort of make the grass, because we as humans know that where light falls, that a shadow happens. And if there isn't a shadow, well, it's either midday, and we don't use them. But actually, the sepia red's a really, really nice colour. And I'm just going to kind of touch up in some of these sort of darker areas, just where it's sort of a little bit more muted and not quite as bright. So I'm just using